Have you ever experienced someone who pulled away from you? Maybe they ghosted you, avoided every emotionally honest conversation, or ended things just when you thought it was getting real, only to come back later with a calm voice and say, "Hey, I still want you in my life. Can we just be friends?" If so, I need you to hear this clearly. What's happening isn't random, and it's not as harmless as it may seem. It might even feel flattering in the moment, like maybe you still matter to them, but under the surface something much deeper is playing out. And if you don't understand it, you're at risk of getting caught in a cycle that quietly chips away at your self-worth. I'm Jim Rohn, and in this video we're going to unpack a pattern that many people miss, especially those with anxious or sensitive attachment styles. Why do avoidant people often disappear when things start to feel emotionally intimate, only to come back later and offer friendship instead of commitment? Why not just stay gone? Why not offer clarity instead of emotional breadcrumbs? Here's the truth that offer of friendship isn't always about reconnection or emotional growth. More often, it's about control. It's a way for the avoidant person to manage their discomfort without having to fully face yours. They want some emotional closeness, but only on their terms. They crave connection, but not the kind that requires vulnerability, accountability, or depth. Friendship for them becomes a low-risk middle ground. And if you're still emotionally attached, that offer can feel like hope, when it's actually just a softer version of distance. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through the avoidant emotional loop, how it works, why it repeats, and why it's not your job to manage someone else's fears at the expense of your own emotional needs. We'll talk about what a secure response looks like, one rooted in self-respect, not chasing. One that says, "I see what you're offering, and I choose clarity over confusion." So, if you've ever felt stuck in that painful emotional limbo, not really together, not really apart, this video is for you. I want to help you stop mistaking mixed signals for emotional depth. And I want to remind you, you deserve someone who doesn't just circle back. You deserve someone who stays. Stick around till the end, and if you're ready to stop walking on eggshells around avoidant behavior, hit that subscribe button. Because here we choose clarity, emotional accountability, and secure love. And I promise you're not asking for too much. You're just finally refusing to accept too little. Let's get one thing straight. Avoidant people don't offer friendship because they've suddenly transformed into emotionally available, self-aware partners. They offer it because it feels safer than intimacy. For them, deep emotional closeness feels like losing control. It feels risky, overwhelming, even threatening. So when the connection starts to deepen, their nervous system goes into retreat mode. They shut down. They vanish. And you're left with questions, confusion, and hurt. But then, just when you've begun to accept the distance, they reappear. Not with accountability, not with clarity, but with an offer that sounds gentle and generous. Can we still be friends? It sounds simple on the surface, but beneath that offer is a complex emotional pattern rooted in fear. When an avoidant person asks for friendship, it's rarely about rebuilding something real. It's often about maintaining emotional access to you without the pressure of showing up fully. They miss your presence. They miss the comfort of the connection, but not the responsibility. They want to feel close without feeling seen too deeply. And for many, friendship offers just enough connection to ease their loneliness while keeping emotional risk at arm's length. This is the part that's hard to swallow, especially if you have an anxious or sensitive attachment style, because their offer can sound like hope. It sounds like reconnection, like maybe this is a stepping stone back to love. But more often it's a sidestep, not a forward movement. It's not growth. It's the preservation of distance just wrapped in softer language. And here's where many people get stuck. You begin to internalize their avoidance. You start adjusting yourself to fit their comfort zone. You tell yourself not to ask for too much, not to push them away. You silence your needs in the name of keeping the peace. And slowly, you abandon yourself to stay close to someone who's never truly met you emotionally. That's not love. That's self-abandonment. So if you're in this situation, I want you to hear this loud and clear. Their fear of intimacy is not your invitation to shrink. You are not here to be emotionally convenient. You're here to be fully met, fully loved. And unless the person in front of you is doing the work to shift that avoidant pattern actively, consistently, then let's just be friends isn't a reconnection. It's a delay, a detour, a breadcrumb that keeps you emotionally tethered to someone who doesn't have the capacity or the courage to truly show up. So let's talk about what a securely attached person would do in this situation. Because if you're watching this, there's a good chance you've been caught in the loop. They pull away. You feel confused and abandoned. They come back offering friendship. And part of you hopes this means things are changing. But here's the hard truth. If nothing about their behavior has changed, then nothing has actually changed. A securely attached person doesn't just react to what's being offered, they assess it. They pause and ask, does this dynamic feel safe, mutual, and emotionally nourishing for me? If the answer is no, they don't shrink themselves to fit it. They don't chase crumbs and call it connection. They honor their standards, even if it means walking away. When an avoidant person offers friendship, a secure individual doesn't immediately take it as a sign of hope. They recognize it for what it often is, an emotional safety net for the avoidant, not a bridge to deeper intimacy. A secure person doesn't confuse access with investment. They know that presence without emotional responsibility isn't enough. And that's where your power lives, in the pause between what someone offers and what you accept. Let me be clear, this isn't about being cold, punishing, or emotionally unavailable in return. It's about being discerning. It's about not trading emotional clarity for temporary closeness. Because the minute you accept a dynamic that doesn't honor your emotional needs, you're teaching your nervous system to tolerate confusion as normal. And that's not love, that's survival. Now I know what some of you are thinking, but maybe if I accept the friendship, they'll feel safer and then they'll come around. That's your hope talking. That's your fear of letting go, bargaining with reality. And that hope, if it's not grounded in observable change, is how you stay stuck. If someone has ghosted you, pulled away during emotional intimacy, and then returned with no real accountability, no apology, no ownership, no conversation about what went wrong, and now they just want to be friends, that is not progress. That is emotional recycling. Here's what a secure, self-respecting response might sound like. I hear that you want to be friends, and I care about you. But friendship isn't neutral for me right now. I'm still healing from the emotional distance that was created, and maintaining a casual connection feels like a compromise I'm no longer willing to make. If you ever want to show up in a way that reflects mutual emotional presence and clarity, I'd be open to that conversation. But I can't participate in something that keeps me stuck between hope and heartbreak. That is not dramatic. That is not too much. That is what emotional maturity sounds like. It's what protecting your peace sounds like. Avoidant individuals aren't bad people, but they often operate from unhealed patterns that create confusion in others, especially those who crave depth and emotional consistency. If they are not actively working to unpack those patterns through therapy, self-reflection, real change, then their return isn't about you. It's about what they need to feel comfortable again. You are not here to be someone's comfort zone. You're here to experience connection that feels safe, reciprocal, and emotionally available. And if someone can't meet you there, that's not rejection. That's redirection. Back to yourself. Back to your standards. Back to the version of you that doesn't settle for halfway closeness wrapped in mixed signals. Let's end the cycle here. Not with bitterness, but with clarity. Not with walls, but with boundaries. Not with chasing, but with self-respect. Because your peace matters. Your needs matter. And the moment you stop interpreting confusion as depth, you create space for the kind of connection that doesn't have to be explained, fixed, or fought for. You deserve more than being someone's emotional maybe. Let's talk about something few people recognize until they're already exhausted by it, the avoidant loop. This loop is the emotional cycle that leaves you feeling confused, hopeful, and heartbroken all at once. It's what keeps so many people stuck in a dynamic that never quite moves forward, but also never fully ends. And the more emotionally invested you are, the harder it is to see this pattern for what it is not. Intimacy, but emotional survival wrapped in familiar closeness. Here's how the avoidant loop typically plays out. In the beginning, the connection may feel real, deep, even. Avoidant individuals aren't incapable of bonding. In fact, many of them are kind, intelligent, attentive at first. But as emotional vulnerability increases, so does their sense of internal threat. It's not you, it's the closeness. Something about being seen too deeply, needed too much, or emotionally depended on, activates a primal fear in them, the fear of losing themselves. And so they withdraw. They pull back, not always dramatically. Sometimes it's subtle delayed replies, emotional detachment, sudden busyness. Other times it's total shutdown, ghosting, ending the connection, disappearing altogether. And if you've experienced this, you know how painful that silence is. It leaves you spinning, wondering what went wrong, whether you said too much, needed too much, or simply weren't enough. But then, just when you've started to grieve or detach, they return. Not with clarity, not with a repaired foundation, but with something deceptively light and inviting. Let's be friends. It sounds harmless. It sounds kind. But often, it's the start of the same cycle, just in a softer disguise. What they're really saying is, I want connection, but not the kind that challenges me. I want you close, but not close enough to risk discomfort. And if you don't recognize the loop, this moment feels like a gift. Like maybe it means they've changed. Like maybe, just maybe, you're slowly getting back to what you had. But this is where you must pause. Because unless something within them has actually shifted, unless they've done the work to understand their own fears, patterns, and emotional avoidances, this isn't healing. This is repetition. The cycle is looping back to its beginning. They feel safe again now that you're not asking for too much. Now that emotional intensity has dropped. Now that they're back in control. This loop keeps spinning until someone, usually you, chooses to step off. Because if you don't, you start organizing your emotional life around their tolerance. You start adjusting, shrinking, silencing your needs just to stay close. You begin to believe that love means waiting, tiptoeing over understanding. And in doing so, you disconnect from your own emotional center, your clarity, your truth, your peace. That's not love, that's survival. And if you grew up learning to equate emotional inconsistency with love, this loop might feel familiar, even comforting, but that doesn't make it right. It just makes it harder to leave. So let me offer you a different lens. This loop isn't a sign of potential. It's a test of your self-trust. It's not about whether they'll ever choose you. It's about whether you will choose yourself. Breaking the avoidant loop doesn't always require confrontation. It requires clarity. You don't have to yell, plead, or convince them of anything. You simply have to get honest with yourself about what this pattern is costing you. about how long you've tolerated uncertainty in exchange for the tiniest bits of closeness, and about whether the friendship they're offering actually serves your healing or just helps them manage their guilt. Real connection, safe, secure, emotionally attuned connection doesn't come with this much confusion. It doesn't leave you guessing. It doesn't rely on distance to feel safe again. It builds slowly but clearly through mutual effort, ownership, and presence. So, if you're caught in the loop right now, here's what I want you to hear. You don't break the cycle by waiting for them to become ready. You break it by becoming ready yourself to stop accepting halfway love, to stop calling confusion chemistry, to stop abandoning yourself just to stay relevant in someone else's emotionally guarded world. You're not asking for too much. You're just finally waking up to the fact that you deserve more than the bare minimum. And that shift, that's the beginning of healing. If you've been holding on, waiting, hoping, analyzing every message, every gesture, trying to figure out whether the offer of friendship means they're coming back, I want you to pause, take a deep breath, and really ask yourself, what am I clinging to? Is it the person, or is it the story I created about who they could become if only I were patient enough? Because the truth is, waiting for someone to stop fearing closeness is not love. It's emotional self-abandonment. It's placing your healing on hold for someone else's comfort. It's hoping that your presence alone will be enough to change a pattern that only they can choose to rewrite. And I know letting go doesn't always come with anger. Sometimes it comes with grief, with tenderness, with the ache of realizing that someone can care about you and still not be capable of loving you in the way you need. But here's what I need you to remember: clarity is kind. And you do not need to keep yourself small in order to be loved. You don't need to accept halfway connection and call it maturity. You don't need to keep showing how understanding you are in hopes that they'll eventually meet you where you are. You are allowed to say, "This dynamic doesn't work for me." You are allowed to walk away, not because you're bitter, but because you're done living in confusion. You are allowed to close a door that someone else keeps opening just enough to keep you hoping. Healing begins when you stop taking someone's avoidance personally, when you realize it's not a reflection of your worth, but a mirror of their own emotional blueprint. They're not wrong for protecting themselves, but you're not wrong for protecting your peace either. And maybe the most powerful thing you can do isn't to get them to come back, it's to get yourself back. The version of you that was clear, anchored, unshaken by silence, unavailable for emotional breadcrumbs. So if you're still wondering whether to accept that "let's be friends" offer, let me leave you with this: if it costs you your clarity, it's not friendship, it's a holding pattern. And you were not born to live in limbo. You were born for connection that honors your heart, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's real. And that begins when you choose you. If this message resonates with you, I hope you'll subscribe. Because this is the space where we break cycles, not just stories. Where we stop over-functioning in relationships that under-deliver. And where we start choosing clarity, not because it's easy, but because it's true. You're not asking for too much. You're just finally done with too little. And that's not the end. That's your beginning. At the heart of this discussion lies a truth that so many of us have struggled to accept. Not all connection is healthy, and not every return is a sign of growth. When an avoidantly attached person reappears in your life, offering just friendship, it can trigger hope, longing, and confusion, especially if part of you still believes they'll change. But understanding the psychology behind this behavior is what brings you back to your power. Avoidant individuals are often not malicious. They're simply operating from unhealed emotional blueprints shaped by past experiences that taught them intimacy equals danger. Their offer of friendship is in many cases a way to maintain connection without emotional vulnerability or responsibility. What we explored today is not about blame, it's about clarity. It's about recognizing the difference between someone wanting to keep you around and someone choosing to truly show up for you. It's about breaking the avoidant loop that leaves you anxious, waiting, and emotionally overextending. And it's about choosing with self-respect to stop settling for halfway connections that leave your emotional needs unmet. Here's what matters most. You deserve more than mixed signals. You deserve more than temporary closeness. You deserve emotional safety presence and consistency. If someone isn't ready to meet you with that level of truth, it's not your job to wait for them to become ready. It's your responsibility to return to yourself, to the version of you who no longer begs for clarity because you've become the source of it. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this video brought you insight, comfort, or a sense of being seen, thank you for being here. You're not alone in this journey. And the more we speak truth to these patterns, the more we heal them together. If you found value in today's message, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel so we can keep growing this space of emotional clarity and relational truth. And if this resonated with you, drop a comment below. Share your experience. Your story might be the one that helps someone else feel less alone. Until next time, take care of your peace. Honor your needs, and remember, you're not too much. You're just finally done with too little.